Welcome to State of the State. I'm Darlene and I'm in conversation with Brenda Jacobs. Brenda is the secretary of the Rhode Island Rifle and Revolver Association. She's also a lobbyist and a certified firearms instructor. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and Brenda is here to talk to us about gun violence and some very special programs for suicide prevention. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be helping with this subject because it is, a very testy subject, especially in the gun community. So I'm happy to be able to, let our voices be heard.
Yeah. So let's talk about your journey to firearms. You want to give us a little, for those that missed the first show that you were on, a little backstory.
Well, ironically, I got involved in the shooting sports when I was 11, and it was because a friend of my dad's son got involved because his doctor told him that to treat his ADHD, that he should get his son involved in competitive shooting sports because it teaches respect, self-control, discipline, and more focused thinking.
Wow.
And that's how my dad and I, we got started in competition, was because of that.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Who would have thought of that now, right?
Yeah.
So, but it does, it slows your thought process, and it helps them to focus and concentrate, and, just kind of got to be in your zen in order to be doing that. So he had a pro-gun doctor, and that's what he told him, and he ended up graduating from college and with a master's degree, and was out doing fabulous things. So.
Yeah, I would think that would help with anxiety and depression as well, because you're very present.
Yes.
When we're in the future, we can become very anxious. When we're in the past, perhaps depressed, and being very present, I would think would help with that.
Yeah, a lot of people ask, what you do for what I do for relaxation, and how can shooting possibly make you relaxed? But that's it. You have to be inside your own head, and you have to be concentrating on your breath. You have to be. It's like yoga, and I use a lot of yoga techniques when I shoot, because you have to calm yourself, talk to yourself, bring yourself down, and it's all breathing exercises. So it is very, very relaxing to be able to be on the range.
Yeah, being present like that, paying attention to your breath, paying attention to what you're doing.
Your heart rate, everything.
Your heart rate, but even I would imagine putting out your firearm, your magazine, all that, being very present and very focused can be very relaxing.
Yeah.
Yes. Very interesting.
Yeah,
okay.
It is interesting, but because people don't usually think of firearms in that way or shooting in that way. You think shooting, you automatically think violence, but there's a whole other world out there when it comes to the shooting sports, and there are a lot of Olympians that actually, especially golfers, that actually shoot on their off season because it helps them with stance, self-control, all of your body's kinetics, your kinetic energy. So that really comes into play, and it helps them to to work on their skill set.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay, so the last time you were here, you spoke about an organization. We didn't get to touch upon some of the very special programs that the organization has for suicide prevention, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's quite a few of them out there. Okay. A lot of the gun, like National Shooting Sports Foundation, NRA, Gun Owners of America, they do programs like Walk the Talk, and that means that it's okay to talk about mental illness, because in our gun community, it's stigmatized. And in general, it's stigmatized, but more so in the gun community.
Why do you think?
Because people are afraid to lose their guns because of, on your 4473 form, when you are purchasing a firearm, you have to disclose if you're being treated for mental illness. So that prevents so many people from getting help when they really need it. Particularly in this state, it's a problem because we don't have an appeals process. Anti-gun people think, oh, well, they just want an appeals process because, well, they don't realize there's a whole bunch of information behind that. We want an appeals process because I don't think, for example, that someone who had a death in the family and needed to go out and, get medication or see a therapist should be stigmatized for life and not be able to have firearms because they had a lapse for a little while in their mental health. I don't think a woman that has...
And that may very well be an acute condition.
Right. Right, and so you have things like divorce that make people go.
And grief is normal.
Right.
We also want to normalize some of the emotions. Right. So grief is a very normal, healthy response to a death of a close one.
Right, and a lot of people seek help for that, but you would have to disclose. You have to disclose that if you've been treated for any type of a mental illness, and they, so mental illness is grouped all into this one category where. It's not. There's all different types of mental illness, or just working on your mental health. So let's be proactive. If I want to see a therapist, a marriage counselor, or anybody like that, does that now stigmatize me that I needed to get, to get mental health?
Right. So it does it right now.
Yeah.
Does it right now?
Yeah, because if you're treated by, it depends. Like a lot of people won't see a psychiatrist because that's really like the top of the, the gun community. That's the top of the scale. Women with postpartum depression, should they not be able to ever own a firearm, or should they have to relinquish their firearms if they suffer from postpartum depression?
Right.
It's temporary. So that's one of the reasons why we are always pushing for an appeals process, because the problem that we're having right now is people are not getting help. They're not seeking help because of the stigma, and they're afraid of the repercussions, and that a lot of times compounds the anxiety and the depression, and it makes it a lot worse. And we've seen it in our own community. I've seen it in people. So that's why the other programs like Hold My Gun, that comes in. And even though we don't have a chapter of Hold My Gun in Rhode Island, we do it for each other. Okay. And a lot of times gun stores or close friends, if there's a divorce, you want to make sure that can be a very tense time in a household. So like a lot of times we'll say, hey, you can bring your guns over, we'll put them in our safe, we catalog them, we hold on to them until the crisis passes. A lot of gun stores will do that too. People don't realize that we already do this for each other. And that's another topic that they don't want to talk about, because how are they going to regulate that now? That's why we were very against one of the bills as far as the only one pistol, or only one firearm in 30 days. That would prohibit me as an FFL. That would prohibit me from helping someone in a situation. If I was to
dive into that.
Yeah, so if I was, say someone has a firearm collection, it's family heirlooms, they may have been competitors, they have a lot of money invested, or some people buy firearms for investment. You're having a crisis in your household, and you know that it's in the best interest of the family to have the firearms removed temporarily. So if I was to take them in as an FFL, I can't give them all back at one time. I would have to give them back one at a time.
Every 30 days?
At a time. So
one every 30 days,
right,
Brenda?
And it also puts up like a red flag, like for ATF. Why did we just take in so many firearms? Why are we relinquishing so many firearms to one person? Why is this one person now consistently getting a firearm back? So that's a situation, because I happen to have an FFL with my dad, but
an FFL for
a federal firearms license.
Okay.
But you have the people are helping. We're already helping each other, because we understand how other gun owners think, and we know about the stigma. We know about loopholes like this that could really get people hung up. You could have a red flag situation. Well, you know what? We're already there a lot of times.
Yep. I'm going to have you pause right there just to explain to our audience what that is.
Red flag is when you get flagged. If you're a firearm owner and someone thinks that you might be a threat to yourself or to someone, they can call the police and they can have your guns taken out of your house. And that also it amplifies an already tense situation. And a lot of times we found that it's, especially in divorces, it may just be a way to be vindictive. How do you know that? And why isn't there an appeals process? Again, an appeals process, if people knew that they would have the chance to be heard, it would probably, not be as dire as what people feel right now.
So what would happen now if someone's guns were taken from them, right? So if they were thought to be a threat to themselves or someone else, their guns were taken from them, they're not a threat, let's say they're not, then what happens?
It takes a very long time to get them back, sometimes years.
Because
to
there's
get them
no
back.
appeals process
There's no
right now.
appeals process, and and we've seen it take up to 5 years for people to get their firearms back, and even more, because we just had the red flag case that got dismissed with the gentleman in the wheelchair, and that case was pending, I think, for almost 8 years.
Wow.
So, so that's why people are so defensive about it. We're a whole culture, and people don't understand our culture as much as we try and get it out there, and they don't realize that a lot of these laws that they're trying to pass actually just make things so much worse for a lot of people, and it's tragic. And it's something that we are hoping to get, by talking like this today. We hope that people will understand a little bit better why we get so upset. And it is a lot to do with the stigma. We're already stigmatized because we're gun owners, and now there's a stigma. Think of a mass shooting. When there's a mass shooting in the country, it all gravitates also again to mental illness, and then, oh, well, you're just using that as a tool, because you're pro-gun and you just want to say it's because of mental illness. Well, again, mental illness is grouped into one category. A lot of these kids, especially that have been involved in mass shootings, a lot of times it wasn't pre-planned. It was a bullying. It was a stressor at home. It was a lot of it's economically driven too, with the families under duress, that kids, it just transfers down. So what is the actual, that's still considered mental illness because of the stress and the anxiety and the depression, but what is it brought on by? It can't all keep being grouped into one category.
Right, so you're saying we should really investigate what's underneath that.
Yeah, and understand it all better.
And how do we do that?
Well, education, educating ourselves. So as a member of the gun community, I like you guys know me, I go above and beyond, but I became a mental health first responder. It interests me because I've had, in my family there's mental illness. I've also had suicides within our family. So I wanted to understand it better. And so I became a mental health first responder, and I'm like, it was such a great class, and I loved it. And then when it was right before COVID, and then afterwards when I tried to become an instructor, there's nobody around that can make you and help you become an instructor, and if you can, you'd have to go out of state, and then it's $2,500. So I called around, to the Department of Health and suicide. National Suicide Prevention, and they don't have grants they have grants for studies, but they don't have grants for actual education.
Right, to help train you to get the word out there and to train others.
Yeah. So that's something I'm still pursuing, because as I've talked about my experience to other firearms instructors, they're very interested because they do segments. It's veterans. They do one for adolescents. They do one for elderly. They do one for, just adults, because each one of those categories have different stress. You have the veterans that are suffering from PTSD. The elderly that are angry because they're aging, or that they might be losing some of their cognitive abilities.
That can be very frustrating.
And that's so every segment of that is so important on so many levels. And that's why, like NSSF, National Shooting Sports Foundation, they actually they help a lot of retail establishments. So they have a whole program out there that help retailers understand and watch for the signs. And they have a lot of resources.
We are halfway through our show already.
Oh, wow.
Yes, so we're too fast. I know. All right, so where would you like to take this interview?
I don't know. Where do you guys want? I don't know what intrigues you.
Well, I want you to share more of the organizations. Where might our audience get help?
Okay, let me just think.
What's important to you, Brenda?
Well, I think just mainly, well, there's so much to this. I think that talking to each other is great. And understanding, I like, that segmenting that the different pockets of mental health, so it's not all grouped together. I don't know. You're going to have to ask me a question.
Okay, yeah. So what do you mean by that? So segmenting the different aspects of mental health.
So like I said earlier, like veterans, that's a whole category of, PTSD, or they may have been injured. So you would help those veterans in a different way than you would help youth. Like when I think about youth and the gun sports, I bring kids in and they do have ADHD, and now they're medicated though, so that adds a different tier. So you have to be responsible and ask the parents, were they consistent with their medication? Are they off it today? Are they having a good day, a bad day? So I have to be in tune. And that's really important when it comes to being an instructor, and then being around, being aware of mental health situations that can arise. And that's why I think it's so important that we get more training. And so that's where I go back to education. It's very important on every level, whether you're a gunner or not, to be educated and not have the stigma, and be able to identify someone that's struggling.
Yeah. Did you take the mental health first aid training? Is that what?
Yep.
Yeah. So we know just asking someone if they have had suicidal thoughts is incredibly helpful in preventing suicide.
Right.
It's the number one preventable death.
It's amazing because you're afraid to ask that question. Again, it goes back to stigma. You're afraid to ask that question, but I can tell you within the past 2 years, the people that I've asked that question to answer you honestly.
Absolutely.
And the answer is yes. And that to me is astounding. That they're already to that level, and then you ask them and they say yes. So and then it's nice to know that I can, and other firearm owners, they're right there to help. And I think that's what's fascinating about our community, is that they're right there. Okay, do a wellness check on this person. Hey, you know what? Why don't we move your firearms over to to so and so's house for a little while while you work through this. And I think that's very important.
Yeah. One aspect of mental health that we don't talk enough about is personality disorders, lack of empathy, lack of remorse, right? So sociopathy and psychopathy. Where do you think that factors into gun violence and maybe suicide prevention or domestic violence?
Well, a lot of that is external. A lot of that's, our culture, our society in general right now doesn't care for one another. And a lot of that, I think, when I work with youth, it's the video games and the TV shows and the movies. And I know a lot of anti-gun people don't like to hear that, but when you ask the kids where they learned how to hold a firearm like that when they're first on your range, and they say, oh yeah, well I play this video game or that video game, and it desensitizes them.
Well, do you know too that television at one point was taking the place of parents, right? Because children are looking for connection. So now it's video games. Video game social media is designed to be addictive, designed for you to come back and get a dopamine hit, and you're going to need more of it. There's also parts of the brain then that are not developing properly. Right, the parts of the brain that focus on empathy and compassion, right? So if they're not developing properly, we might be seeing less empathy. Right.
Right. And the other thing, when you're a competitor, you learn how to use your right brain versus your left brain too. So it helps develop the healthier part of the brain, especially with the youth. You're developing that, and you're helping to strengthen that, which a lot of people don't realize. But it's really been a real social breakdown, I think, in general, the violence that the kids see all the time, and how it just has totally desensitized them. And I think that's a real big problem. And we have ideas for solutions too, but you have to start right at the foundation. I really feel like bringing trade schools back into school would be a huge help. Because not everybody's college bound. If you would start to bring trade schools back in, the kids that aren't they're not into the books, you would be able to capture their attention and hopefully put them in a trade. Better trades mean better jobs, mean better communities. It's like a building block.
You feel better about yourself.
Right.
if you're feeling productive, so one of the sort of parts of good mental health is feeling productive.
Right, and accomplished.
And
I've
accomplished, and
something.
also having community.
Right.
The last show, you talked a little bit about domestic violence. And so in this state, we don't have any record for the mechanisms for death in domestic violence situations. Right. So we don't know really how many are gun-related.
Right, right. And the other side of the domestic violence issue is, because we've trained a lot of women that are survivors of domestic violence, and they find that being able to, part of their wellness is being able to feel like they're in control and they can protect themselves.
Right.
So that is so nice when you're on a range and you have a person that's timid because of the abuse that they've suffered, but they know that they're at a point where they want to take control and they want to be in charge of themselves, and they put a firearm in their hand and they're scared to death, and those are the ones that are the hardest to get to leave later because they're so excited that they feel empowered.
Right.
And every time I teach a survivor, I pray that they'll never have to use that as a defense, but they know that they can.
Yeah.
And that's again why when legislation is brought forth, like the safe storage law, now you're going to tell someone that's done all the right things and is a survivor that no, you're not going to have access to that now, or you're going to have a 5-minute delay of access to that firearm.
What is that?
The safe storage is where it has to be locked in a safe, unloaded.
In Rhode Island.
In Rhode Island.
So in Rhode Island, if you own a firearm, it has to be in your home?
There's the legislation they're trying to put forth this year. Yeah, in your home, you can't, even if you're a concealed carry holder, it has to be under your control. So, which is a gray area. Does that mean that I can't leave my firearm, to go to the...
Could you have a firearm in your purse?
If you're concealed, but where is your purse going to be when you're at home? Is it under your...
Well, okay, so if you're going out in public and you are carrying a handbag,
right?
Are you permitted to keep that firearm in your handbag?
Yes.
Is that on your person?
Yes.
It is.
But if you're home and the purse is on the counter, that's no longer considered safe storage.
So if someone were to enter your home, even with a protective order, someone can break into your home.
It's a piece of paper.
So your firearm would be locked up.
Right.
And the ammunition would be separate.
Right. And it wouldn't be loaded. So you are at a complete disadvantage in your own home to be able to protect yourself. And so now we've exposed that through all of the media, so now it's very possible that the person that, that committed the crime against you is going to know. They're going to know you're delayed in being able to protect yourself.
Yeah.
So, so that's why we're not just being, jerks and being like, oh, I'm so pro-gun that I'm oblivious to what's going on in society. No, we understand what's going on in society, and that's why we're so heart set against this legislation, because we know what can happen in a worst case scenario.
Okay. And
that's very frustrating because, we're very rational and logical and responsible, and yet we keep getting, stigmatized as being, the gun nuts and everything else. But it's like, no, we've seen these situations happen. We've understand these situations. We've talked to people that are in these situations. So, I get it. Some victims, they either get very afraid of a firearm or they come to us for firearm training. And that's their choice, but why keep taking their choice away? If that's you, I can't tell anybody how they want to feel safer. Yeah. But if someone has the right and wants to feel safer, then they should be allowed to do that without stigma.
Okay. All right. So 5 minutes.
Okay.
What else do you have?
Well, I just want to remind everybody how important an appeals process would be for us.
Okay.
Especially when it comes to people in the firearm community that need help, or that feel that they need help, but they're afraid to go get help.
Yep. So let's tell our audience where they can go.
So they can call any one of our organizations, because we would definitely be able to point them in the right direction and to help them, especially if it becomes a situation where they would like to store their firearms.
No, but as far as changing legislation.
Oh, changing legislation? Oh, we have to contact our senators and representatives and make sure that they understand that a lot of these bills are only going to make things much worse and not better. And that they're, at the end of the day, it's not going to help people that are mentally ill, especially in our community, or having a temporary lapse. It's only going to compound the urgency that these people feel, and the depression and the anxiety, and that's not helpful, especially in a situation where someone needs to get help. They should be able to get help without being penalized.
Yeah. So you mentioned Walk the Talk.
Hold My Guns, Cause for a Pause. That is an initiative that's put forth by I think it's Gun Owners of America, but that's where they talk to people, and if you put a picture of a family member in your safe, or something that's very near and dear to your heart. So if you've got to figure, even the safe storage law, they said it's going to stop suicide. Well, not if the firearm owner that has the combination to the safe has access, right? So cause for a pause is, if you put something that means something that's very special to you, so it causes you to pause if you ever get so despondent that you think you want to take your life. It's a visual aid that's used in your safe, so that you don't ever, when you open that safe, you think about all you have to lose.
Yeah, that can be in someone's safety plan.
Right. Absolutely.
Other organizations.
National Shooting Sports Foundation. They, like I said, they help a lot of the retailers. NRA has programs. Women for Gun Rights Group, they're big on Walk the Talk. So there's a lot out there that I have not even even touched on.
But Rhode Island doesn't have
no, and when we try
branch.
And get I wanted to try and get something going by doing the mental health first responders trainers, get people trained, and it's still something I work on on the side, trying to get, because I think that would be really beneficial to us, to get engaged and be able to spread the word to the community too, so that they don't have to be so worried about getting help if they need help. Because I've seen that happen in my life, where we could have helped someone, but they just refused because they just did not want their firearms taken from them. Yeah. So and that's a sad situation for the family. And I've actually even when I took the class, it was a mom who had lost a child, and it's just, I don't want anybody to ever have to go through that, and I want people to know that there are resources out there. We just got to be able to be more vocal about it, and not be afraid to be vocal, and try and break that stigma, just like we try and break the stigma on so many other social changes. This has to be one of them, and it has to be a priority. Yeah. So again, if we just ask, how are you? Are you having suicidal thoughts? I totally believe in that, and I believe in that from personal experience. When I've asked people, and they've answered yes. Okay,
we have 1 minute. It's all yours. What do you want to finish up with? Anything you want to say to our audience, Brenda?
Well, I just thank you guys for helping us always get the word out. You don't know when mental illness is going to strike. You really don't, because it could be a tragedy, it could be a natural disaster, it could be a health issue. Right, and you can't be afraid to get help, and you can't be afraid to ask for help.
Right, and like we said, we don't want to pathologize healthy emotions. Right. Like grief, like something acute, a situation like that where you're mourning.
And social stress. There's so much social stress right now, and I feel bad for our youth. So we have to be aware of that, and be there to help them, and let's start educating them now to be able to talk when they're having a problem. So maybe we can break the cycle.
Let's break the cycle. Thank you.
Thank you.
You've been watching State of the State. I'm Darlene DeRezzo. Please find us on social media. We have a new Instagram account that is @StateOfTheStateRI.